What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we are checking out the new Samsung Galaxy A02. Yes, another new A series phone from Samsung. We actually already got the A02s earlier in the year, so we're kind of going backwards, I guess. This phone is more of the direct replacement to last year's A01. And if you guys remember, the A01 was actually a decent, super affordable smartphone. It was small and compact, easy to use, offered a solid value. This new A02, on the other hand, is bigger, more expensive, and actually a way worse phone. Sorry, spoiler alert, but that seems to be the case here. I'm gonna get into all of that in this video, of course, but first things first, let's go ahead and unbox this thing and see what all comes inside the package. So you can see that this device did receive that sort of new packaging style that's drastically different from last year's and even some of this year's A series phones. Still not really sure what that's about, but sliding off the lid of the box, the first thing we get is the Samsung stamped cardboard packet. And inside, there's just a stack of paperwork and instructions. Unfortunately, no included clear rubber case with this phone. Next up is the A02 itself, of course. Obviously, I got mine in this bright red color, but it also comes in blue and black. We'll set it to the side for just a second, and digging a little deeper, there are a couple other accessories included. At the very bottom of the box is where you'll find that SIM ejector tool if you need it. And as far as the charging setup, you get the old style 10-watt USB wall plug paired with a USB-A to micro USB cable. Yes, this phone charges via micro USB, which is really pretty surprising. So with all that stuff out of the way, here is the new A02 once again. And I gotta be honest, now that we've moved beyond the unboxing experience, I'm gonna put pleasantries aside and say that while I might usually classify a phone like this as a budget device, something affordable, bare bones, made for folks who just need any old phone for the basic stuff, this device deserves to be called cheap. It's lower than budget, and not in a good way. And really, in my opinion, something you probably shouldn't even consider in 2021, especially for the starting price of some $150, which is how much this phone sells for right now. And I realize that's saying a lot, so let me explain. Physically, there's almost nothing wrong with this device at first glance. Like I mentioned already, the A02 is now a larger 6.5-inch phone. It's way bigger than the A01, which was 5.7 inches, and the small size was kind of a selling point for that device. This is now yet another big phone in the big phone lineup, and while it's maybe a little disappointing Samsung offers really no compact devices anymore, it seems, I can understand that getting a phone this size and at that somewhat reasonable price point could be a good deal. You've got a lot of real estate here to work with for consuming content, and the setup is mostly fine. There's a teardrop notch across the top, a little bit of a chin down there at the bottom, slim enough bezels, about what you'd expect for a device like this. And I don't really have too much to complain about so far. Around back, the A02 has an interesting design and finish, to say the least. It's a plastic housing, which again, we should expect, not a big deal, though you can actually kind of feel the seam between the plastic rear cover and plastic frame. So maybe a little lower quality than usual from Samsung, but that's still not my biggest gripe. You might be able to tell that paired with that textured line pattern, which I actually like, gives the phone a little bit of a grip, there's also this like splattered, dotted, speckled white stuff decorating the back and even the sides. This weird art project is only on the red phone, and it looks questionable. It's not my favorite. It kind of makes the phone look dirty, or like it has a whole bunch of breadcrumbs or dust all over it. I don't really get it. I've never seen something like this from Samsung before, so that's definitely a little weird. And like I said, you don't seem to get this on the black or blue colored phones. Taking a look around at everything else, one big positive is the fact that you get dual SIM support and SD card expansion, so that's pretty nice. On the right side, there's just the usual volume and power buttons. Down below though, the headphone jack is a plus, but the micro USB port, like I mentioned earlier, is just a huge negative. There's no excuse for that. The single speaker is also located down there, and this is okay. It is noticeably worse than the other A series phones, unfortunately. It's quieter, it's more muffled, and here's a quick sample so you can get an idea. Around back, there's just a super basic dual camera setup, which I'll talk about in a second, but you might notice that there's no fingerprint sensor on this phone. Not totally unexpected, I guess. The A01 didn't have one either, but still kind of sad to see. There's no face unlock either, so the pin or pattern is the only unlock method here for this phone. The display itself on the A02 is mostly fine. It's a 1600 by 720 resolution LCD panel. It packs in around 270 pixels per inch. On a phone at this price point, being the lowest end A-series phone, I don't think you can really expect much more than this. But actually, in a weird roundabout way, with a new, much more expensive A32 5G, also getting basically this same 720 LCD display, that kind of makes this cheaper phone look good, but mostly just makes the A32 5G look really, really bad. The viewing experience though here is going to be fine considering the price you pay. It's a little brighter even than I expected. It's big, it's somewhat colorful, but you're fighting some off-angle dimming. There's no real distractions though, it's just your average basic sort of screen for a very inexpensive phone like this. And for watching any old YouTube video or browsing social media, it's going to be fine. You just can't expect too much here. All right, so let's get into the main reason why this phone rubs me the wrong way, and that would be the specs. This new A02 is powered by the MediaTek MT6739W processor, which is a 4-year-old quad-core chipset that is objectively and significantly worse than the Snapdragon processor that was thrown into last year's A01. I guess on the bright side, you can now configure this A02 with more storage and RAM, and I kind of say that jokingly though, either 32 or 64 gigs of storage and 2 or 3 gigs of RAM now. But that's honestly something I can even look past, if you can believe it. The processor, though, makes this phone borderline unusable. Out of the box, the A02 ships with Android 10 and Samsung's One UI Core. And I've had other Samsung devices with One UI Core installed, but this phone for some reason seems to have even more stuff taken away than usual. There's a light version of the Samsung browser, basically no pre-installed Samsung apps. The drop-down menu has less stuff shown by default, and when you start flipping through this phone and launching up some of the apps, you quickly realize just how slow and laggy and choppy it really is. I usually like to give a phone a chance, just run through some apps, load some stuff up, see what it can handle before using it too hard. But almost immediately, I was experiencing the inability to smoothly play a YouTube video. Super slow load times for like the internet and other apps. Even basic stuff took more than a couple of seconds to launch. And within the first 15 minutes of playing around with this phone, I had more than just a few apps straight up quit on me. This is bad news for a 2021 smartphone. And honestly, it's pretty bad for a 2015 smartphone. Last year's A01 wasn't even close to being this bad. It honestly was kind of good. And I have no idea why Samsung decided to launch this thing. I gotta say, I'm almost not looking forward to reviewing it because I genuinely don't think a person like me could even use this phone normally. I'm not sure if really anyone could use this phone normally, even if you don't do a lot on your smartphone. If your only goal is to have an emergency secondary phone for phone calls or text messages, maybe that's why you'd get this phone if it were also like free with a prepaid line or something. Certainly still not for $150. This device is just frustrating to use, and I'm blown away by how many issues I had literally right out of the box. This A02 also doesn't seem to have any new software updates either. The most recent one was a security patch in January, so I don't think there's much that can fix it right now. And my first impressions with this thing just have not been good. What makes this even more disappointing is the fact that inside, the A02 gets a really good sized 5000 milliamp battery. Usually with less powerful specs and a lower res screen, that would normally yield some great battery life, 2, maybe even 3 days of use on a single charge. But given the much older processor that obviously struggles to do even basic stuff, I think the huge battery will be canceled out by this poorly optimized setup. And the fact fact that this device also charges via micro USB, which means it's going to take forever to fully charge. All in all, a nice big battery is pretty useless in a useless phone. And then there's the matter of those cameras. Now, around back, you can see that the A02 gets a dual camera setup, but it may as well have been a single lens setup because that's all that's genuinely useful, really. There's a 13 megapixel main shooter and a 2 megapixel macro lens for super up close pictures. Pair that with a 5 megapixel selfie camera and you've got just the basics, and honestly maybe even less than that. Inside the camera app, you've got macro, photo, and video. That's it. There's some Instagram-like filters and the option to change the photo size, but there's no portrait mode anywhere, no night mode obviously, no panorama, no slow-mo, no nothing here. You can film video at 1080 resolution at least, but there's no video stabilization in any capacity. This is a phone that offers just your most basic camera setup, and the results are exactly what you'd expect. You get a picture that's fairly dull, kind of grainy, noisy, lacking a lot of detail. And while your expectations certainly have to be realistic here, I think this is still a bit worse than even I expected. So I kind of hate the fact that this turned into sort of a ranty first impressions video, almost just bashing the A02. But this phone is just not good. I can't think of a single reason why you might get this over the A02s or the A12, even if cost were a concern. For $50 more, you're getting a phone that's seriously 10 times better going with either one of those versus this one. And even getting last year's A01 makes more sense than this. That phone is now like $50 unlocked, and it's literally better than this one in almost every way. I'm baffled that Samsung even launched this phone. I'm not really sure where it's supposed to be positioned in the A series lineup, and I have no idea who this phone is really for. I'm not looking forward to reviewing it in the coming days, to be totally honest, and I'm really glad I got to unbox it so that you didn't have to. But what do you guys think about this phone? Am I being too hard on it? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.